Aloha, everyone. We welcome to you all to another live digital Kava session here on the Polynesian Eyes podcast. This is Tuafale coming all the way from South Central Texas. We're excited to be here. Mr. Atearoa will be joining us shortly.
And that's the thing, Tua, right? And then you get the people who said, see, now you're getting right. We'll see. I don't know if there's been any pushback, but if there's other people like who are like this lady, that's gonna make them marginalized and feel like the story they've heard is incorrect. Because then now you're influenced, maybe the wider people who are outside of, like, let's just say, what's this place, Palauli, this area,
Mhm.
they're gonna say, oh, le Pulemele, because now because maybe they're not understanding the origin of their history, so they're just gonna go with what the
Popular.
researchers and what they say. So
Yeah.
then you kind of
Lose
make
that.
the other, you lose that origin of the story, because then now you get the dominant and other Samoans who are outside of this area and saying, no, it's the Pulemele. See, that's the power of when you don't know, right? When you don't know the origin of the history, and you've been, Samoa was changed to the Germans. You're losing a lot of people who hold the history of this place, and then you only get a very small minority, and they're getting pushed and marginalized because their narrative is not being carried out. So hopefully, and that's the thing, right? And that's the difference with Tonga. There's quite a few of us that still can combat other Tongan academics. We're like, we can still question, because we have really strong, concrete evidence of of oral stories and also ruins that are still there that we can explain to, that can kind of combat some of the
Oh,
Tongan
yeah.
academics when they want to talk about specifically Tongan origin stories, kind of thing. So you see how difficult that can be, and that's why we kind of, you touched upon it, Tua, that, see, thank goodness Tonga survived colonization, because we could have been like this lady
Yes.
here. We're gonna be the very, very small minority, and then change through many different Western governments and whatever, and then we people who don't pass on certain stories. Then you make your story, what you've heard from your ancestors, feel like, "Masi, I think maybe I am. Maybe it was just a good Faikava story
Story.
somewhere." And yes, you know what I mean. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud, Tua, of actually what probably goes on in some of this kind of narrative battle of which one is the correct narrative, because it is a battle of trying to discover our origin. So that's just my
No,
thoughts there.
100%. And I'm trying to find, because we have some pretty awesome viewers and listeners here, and we get some messages and emails,
Mm,
and even to the extent we get texts, right, Masi? I know you
yeah.
get that, but there was one screenshot, and this is important. I'm going to try and see if I can send it to my computer to pull up here. It goes exactly with what you were saying about, because Tonga has this survived colonization, right? It's been the
Yeah.
continuous rulers within Tonga, that some of the ideas um, have survived. Just let me see if
Mm.
I can
No, no, no. Take your time.
find
Take your time
this.
too, because I'm just thinking, like, see, our humble podcast. We're just sharing what this um Samoan local lady in Ha'amoa in Palauli, with her story. We're probably maybe the only few, but at least we're sharing it. But I'm just saying, maybe up to, because that was recorded a while ago. Up to now, she's probably heard a lot more Pulemele's than, it makes you question. It's just like everybody. You've heard something, you say, I'm pretty sure this is what they were I was taught, but the other narrative is coming up with something new that it can dominate yours. So
Yeah,
yeah.
no, 100%. So let me go here. Oh, snap. Where is it? Trying to do this live here is proving to be quite challenging, but I'm trying to send. I just downloaded it. Oh, here it is. Come on, open up. There we go. Uh, open with preview. All right. I'm going to show. something here real quick. Okay. So we got this.
Mm-hmm.
So remember, we talked about these academics who are pushing foreign origins of the
Mm,
Polynesian Empire, and even those are from Ha'amoa say, "Oh, look, those
mm,
well-respected academics from Tonga who point to Ha'amoa as the origin."
mm,
So when the Nukuleka stuff came out, right, where
mm,
we're not just talking about the age of the Lapita, but also farming techniques. This is why
mm,
these academics are saying no. It's not just that it's the oldest Lapita. Yes, that's one piece, but there are farming techniques that are found on the Nukuleka settlement
mm,
that are critical for survival on small islands. And it's
mm,
like a ditch. It's like digging a hole type of farming technique that is the oldest location of that farming technique is found in Nukuleka, which is why
mm,
they're saying this is found throughout Polynesian settlements. This is one
mm.
of the reasons why they're
Human
saying
activity.
Nukuleka
Mm,
is the founding colony or settlement of Polynesia, right? And so this is what happens now that they found that and it has scientific backing to it. This is what this article has. It says the pronouncement that the small fishing village in Nukuleka on the northern shores of eastern Tonga Tapu at the entrance of Whangauta Lagoon to be the cradle of Polynesia,
mm,
let alone the whole of Tonga, does certainly raise a few critical questions.
mm, mm,
What is that? And that's Dr. Augustino Mahina. So
mm,
what is he saying? Hey, I know I've been pushing this narrative of Ha'amoa, Ha'amoa, Ha'amoa,
mm.
but there's some scientific data that really challenges that,
Yeah.
right? And the interesting thing is when you say Ha'amoa, 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 all they have is oral history.
Yeah.
And
Mm,
all I hear online is you got to bring receipts. Ha'amoa is the only one that brings receipts. Please bring to me a scientific study that points to these things. Every scientific study we've looked at, Masi, for the Pulemele, for the Tu'imanua, you know what they all point to? Either the Tu'itonga or they point to the Tu'imanua being younger than the Tu'itonga.
correct. Correct.
You know,
Correct.
and or all of the exotic stones in Ha'amoa, all from Ha'amoa. But if
Mm,
they're a center of trade, a center of an empire, you would expect to see what they find in Tonga. 66% of the stone
mm,
axes in Tonga from outside of Tonga, from Fiji, from Ha'amoa, from Eastern Polynesia.
mm,
That looks
mm,
like a center of an empire,
mm,
right?
mm. Yeah. All the
Any
roads,
thoughts on
all the
that?
roads, all not all the roads like they say all the roads lead to Rome. It's all the sea pathways lead, lead to
Le-
Tonga.
yes. Every ocean route and pathway
Ocean route.
leads to Tongatapu, right?
Uh, uh. No, interesting. No, interesting, Tua. No, and that's the that's the what this is the narrative that we are just trying to our project, and this is our idea. And then at the end of that day, let the Polynesian viewers or non-Polynesians view it and take it and debate it
So
out with their
100%.
friends and colleagues or whoever.
Well, here's another interesting one comment, and I apologize to all the viewers. The comments have been flying. Appreciate the interaction. This one stuck out to me. I've seen a Kava ceremony with Dr. Mahina attending where they use the verbiage from the royal Kava ceremony. Is this sacrilegious? Any thoughts on that, Masi?
Ooh, I have no idea on that. I probably need to check it out, Clyde more. But what do you think, Tua?
So I think there's a fair point here to be made, and I'll
Okay.
give the reason why. People forget that the Tu'itonga was not just a king. It
Mm.
was like Israel, where it was a priest and a king, right?
Two roles, yeah, like a
Two
two
roles.
role.
It
Mm,
was a representation of Hikuleo, a priest,
mm,
like an intermediary, like Moses, like all the prophets, no different than, LDS people, where the high priest was also the chief judge, right?
mm,
Like the leader of the government was also the leader of the church. That was the function of the Tu'itonga until the Tu'itonga decided to split it and give the ruling of the government to another title, and the Tu'itonga was only going to reserve the religious power and influence, right?
Mhm.
So when you understand that at that point, the Tu'itonga is purely a religious thing, and that the Tu'itonga was the only one who had a Taumafakava or a Furitaunga,
Mm.
one could make the argument that that is not a social or political ritual. It's a religious one. It's a religious ritual, the Taumafakava or the Furitaunga.
Mm.
And therefore, to use terms from a religious ritual in something that it doesn't belong to, yes, you can say it's sacrilegious
Mm.
because it is a lowering of the spirituality or the value of something that's religious and supposed to be sacred. So I think you can make a fair point of that.
Mm.
I also want to share, and this is an interesting little tidbit that our oldest brother brought up that was very interesting. So in Tongan culture, this is from Daniel Fale. In our Tongan culture, a line is
Mm.
not secured until there's been 2 generations who have held the title. So what
Okay.
happens is if only one generation holds the title and there is some kind of and there's some kind of what you call concern that the heir to that title is not
Mm.
sufficiently strong to carry the title, they can impose and put someone else into the title. And therefore, that line, it's not the same line, right?
Mm.
Because it's not father to son within 2 generations. So when you have the Kava ceremony,
Mm.
and when they bring in the Kava and then they say, Fakamawe,
Mm.
that is supposed to signify 2 generations of the title going from father to son. It's the same line.
Mm.
That it's Fakamawe. Now it's a stable line because father to son, it has transferred quickly. Apparently, one could make the argument that when Tupou VI received his Kava ceremony, that it was improper to say Fakamawe Kava because it wasn't father to son. It went from
Mm.
brother to brother. And
Mm.
that command, though it's been said many times when it went from Tupou the first, right? I guess Tupou to Queen Salote, or Tupou the second, you could
Yeah.
say that maybe because it's
Grandson.
the grandson, it's a direct line. But in theory, I mean, it doesn't matter. That doesn't mean Tupou the sixth is not the king. We're just talking about little
Yes.
interesting technicalities,
The intricacies of the blood.
intricacies, right?
Yes.
That when they called Ke Fakamawe Kava was an incorrect call
Mm.
because he inherited from his brother, not his father. And it's not until the crown
Ah.
prince of today, when he becomes the king because he inherits it from his father, then
You
would
use
be
the
the right
term.
term, Fakamawe
Mm.
Kava,
Mm. See,
because
and these are
now
the
it's a stable line.
yes. See, and these are the discussions that are need to be held to have the proper terms for different situations, right? So see, and
Yes,
that's and those are even with these things, if you don't teach it or catch on it, because I've seen other Tongan elders even say to other Tongan guys, that's wrong, that's ngawe ake for idea going or something else. See, and those are the discussions that need to be had, because that's interesting to us, that
yeah,
Fakamawe is only between a father and son, not from somebody else.
from brother to brother or
Mm.
cousin to cousin. So
Yeah.
these are some of the interesting intricacies that are really
Mm.
important to keep in mind.
Mm.
Let's come back to our video here. Percent of screen, move other media. Oh, I gotta lose you. Oh, looks like we almost lost connectivity there. Can you
Okay.
hear me, Masi?
Yep, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Awesome.
12 meters high with a base of 3,900 square meters, the Pulemele Mound is the largest and oldest megalithic monument in Samoa. The site is located.
Once again, largest and oldest. What does that really mean?
Mm,
And how does
mm,
she say it's the largest and oldest?
mm.
Because all the studies on the activity on the Pulemele Mound, that pole in the middle where they did the carbon dating, that's
Yeah.
Tuitonga time frame. But they're
That.
referencing human activity on the and around that's thousands
Yes.
of years old.
Yes. Yeah. Because I remember us going through that data point to and that goes to the exact time frame of some of the oral stories and some of the names of the Tuitongas moving their residence to Haamoa. So
Yeah. Well, and here's the other interesting thing. As a side note, for all those, and I know Masi, a lot of people didn't like your framing of it, but I agree with it. The Talakai Faiki and Tana and what Tuna and Fata or whatever
yeah,
was a
yeah,
little scuffle. This wasn't a war. At best,
yeah,
it was a battle, but it wasn't a
yeah,
war,
yeah.
right?
Mm,
Here's a prime example. Tatu Itonga comes back after because Kaulfo Nua Fekai is multiple generations before um I
that
mean,
battle.
sorry. Talakai Faiki is multiple generations before Kaulfo Nua
Kaulufonu.
Fekai, who
Mm,
then goes to Haamoa and stays there for multiple generations and builds the
yeah.
Pulemele Mound. So to
Mm,
say that it was a battle, no, it was a scuffle. It was an
mm,
isolated incident. And then Tatu Itonga never left
yeah.
Samoa? No, he's not going to leave. If he really wanted to exert his power, he probably had loyalists in Samoa that he could have crushed that rebellion, or he
Yeah.
could have gone to the Lao group. He could have gone to
Yeah.
Fiji. He
Yeah.
could have gone to Wallace and Futuna,
Yeah.
or Uvea and Futuna. He could have gone to Ha'apai Vava'u, the Niwas. He could have brought a freaking armada of tens of thousands of warriors if this was a war,
Yeah.
right? But it
Yeah.
wasn't. It was a scuffle. But I wanted to
Well,
bring that up. Any thoughts on that, Mussy?
yeah. Well, I'm just thinking. I don't know. Let's just say if Tuna and Fata did the same thing when Kaulufo Nua Fekai happened, I
Oh
think
yeah,
they would have been wiped out because it seemed from some of the stuff I hear Kaulufo Nua Fekai did, he sounds like he was the guy you don't want to miss. Like he was full on
no,
not Tuitonga by politics, he was Tuitonga by military force. It seems like, and
yes,
Talakai Faiki was probably tough, but I don't know. It seemed like Kaulufo Nua was no joke, and then the guy his the title holders right after him, where it seems like they were just full on military campaign throughout Polynesia. So, and I just brought that up because, like, you're right, Dua. Like, it was. I think that story's just been elevated in the Ha'amoa sense for that family because it gave birth to the one, probably the highest title in Upolu and Savai, the Maria Toa. So obviously, there's gonna be some oral stories to say it was a battle and it was the high. You know what I mean, Tua?
yeah,
But
it elevates them in
yes,
Ha'amoa.
yes. But
Yeah,
yeah, I'm just saying, I don't know. Let's just say if that was to happen to the Fekai, Kau Fonua Fekai, Mashi, from the stories I just hear, he was the guy you didn't want to mess around.
yes, and just so you know, this is a very interesting story from our discussion with Xiaoxi Ilayu.
Mm,
He shares that there were some assassinations of the Tuitonga during Kaulfonua Fekai's time, including his father Takalaua,
yes.
right? And
Hmm.
apparently, before Takalaua, the Tuitonga before him, Xiaoxi Ilayu says that the oral history in Uvea is that Tuitonga's mother was from Uvea and was
Mm,
chosen to be the Tuitonga. And when he got assassinated, the people in Uvea blamed Takalaua and said
mm,
Takalaua was behind the assassination. So they had people come who were loyal to the previous Tuitonga and
mm,
assassinated Takalaua to prove Masi's point of what kind of individual Kaulfo Nuafekai was. Chase these guys,
mm,
right? The assassins chased them all the way to Wallace and Futuna, to Uvea and Futuna, and then told Uvea and Futuna when they went there, you better deliver them
Mm,
or we're coming and we're going to have war.
mm,
What are you going to do? Make your
yeah,
decision, right? So what
yeah,
did the people in Uvea and Futuna said? I'm sorry, assassins. Maybe you're doing our stuff, but to sacrifice you,
yeah. We're having too much. We're pushing it above our weight a bit too much.
yes. And to this is how brutal this guy was. So
Yeah,
they capture them, they take them to Tongatapu, knock out all their teeth,
yeah,
right? Bleeding blood. And then what do they tell them? Now that your teeth's been taken out, chew the kava,
mm, mm,
right? Chew the
mm.
kava, squeeze it, and then he drinks it before killing the dude,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
That's some of
So,
the
so, so to
oral
go
stories.
along
Yeah,
with what you're saying,
yeah,
there were certain Tuitongas you just didn't want to mess with, and then there's others who are they were like
yeah,
entertained. That
yeah,
they looked at Tuna and Fata and they said, you know what,
yeah,
I can give you some respect.
yeah,
You know
yeah.
what, maybe I did push the line,
Mm,
maybe I was over. I can at least respect you that you stood up, but to say that this was a full blown war, I think that is a big stretch.
yeah. Overblown, overblown for sure.
Yeah, 100%. Looking at the time, Masi, I think we're gonna call it good there. I think we have uppercut, sweep, kick,
Mm,
roundhouse to the face on the Pulemele. We've covered that strong enough. We've seen that come up a lot in our social media. So I think we're gonna call that good. Any kind of closing thoughts or any thoughts on that, Mas?
mm, no, no. I mean, I hope we're just a little humble podcast get to share one of our distant relatives, this lady that's in Palauli, sharing her understanding that it was always called the Tonga, and she wasn't the only one. The next interviewer, had some narrative and story she's heard that this was where the Tuitonga was also settled and had people in the area kind of work for him. But hopefully we can just kind of project that, even though it's the minority, but at the same time somebody is sharing it. So, you know, that's just a different name of maybe the local people we can kind of project instead of along with the Pulimele and let the people decide.
Yes. So we're gonna go to other comments on the social media, right?
Okay.
And this is primarily seems to be a pretty well respected and followed social media account called Samoana
Hmm.
and Samoana 80. And this was a response to ASAP Boogie, but they tagged us
Okay.
in this comment. And so we're gonna play the video. We'll react to the video, and then I just want to walk through the comments
Okay.
and have some discussion on the comments, Mr. Atearoa. Is that okay?
Yep.
All right.
We were slaves of the kings and the nobles. If we say something, we're gonna be killed. Our lives were under the control of the nobles and the kings. But King George Tupou the First, he gave our freedom on the 4th of June 1862. And in 1875, he gave our constitution. And in our constitution, we are free from the bondage of the chief abusing us.
And Tonga's way of differentiating between the royalty and the nobles and then the common people. I understand that at some points it was the way of life, and that the common person's life was worth as much as the next rock. you know, or, and it was dispensable, and their purpose for living was to serve. That was there before Captain Cook arrived in Tonga. When he arrived in Tonga, he noted that there was a big difference in the common people and then also the royal household.
Before, we were
So the reason why I bring this up
Okay.
is there is a narrative that's being shared of how cruel or how bad things were, and they were, but there's also some nuances there to be shared there, because the position that's been shared by Samoana is,
Mhm.
see, all the Tongans, you guys were just commoners, you guys were just the bottom, and that's why the Tuitonga married to Ha'amoa, right? Because the
Mhm.
Ha'amoa had the bloodlines. The Ha'amoa had the bloodlines, and that's how the Aiki blood came to Tonga. And no, the Tuitonga never married other Tongans because they were all just slaves and commoners.
Mm.
Any initial thoughts, or you want to walk through the
No,
comments
no,
first?
no. I'm thinking too. I think there's a misunderstanding too. That remember, it's almost like the days of Europe. If you're a high lord or a high title holder, you remember you're the only one to to really have land, and the people really are living on your land. And what's kind of their form of repaying to live on your land is to serve the person who has the land. It doesn't mean that you were a slave. I mean, it was just part of that era, and that's why he abolished that. Was it, they call it the emancipation? They kind of still
Hmm.
celebrate it, but that wasn't enough, because two, he created the constitution, making sure that all Tongans had property of their own, so they can cultivate their own land. That's
Yes.
so there's two parts to that. That unfortunately, if you only know the surface level, yes, you perceive it was such a horrible, and you take the definition now of commoner being such a slavery. You don't understand that back in the days, you really didn't own land. It was under the nobles, but you had the freedom. I do believe we did touch on it, Tua, especially with certain people. They can decide on which people to live on, right?
Yes.
Which land, which ho'eki, or which lord, or whatever the the region that was in control of that area. You can decide where you're gonna go and stay, because at the end of the day, you really didn't have any land, right?
Yes.
So
100%. 100%.
that to me, it's a lot deeper understanding, and what helped us to be free, that we didn't feel like you have to go and serve them. A lot of people still serve the um the Ho'akis, and also the royal king, because I think you touched on it too. If you had ancestors thousands of years that always served a particular Ho'aki, and always affiliated with a certain family of a Ho'aki, or the king, you know what most likely you will do? You probably will follow that, unless something drastic happens. So people still do it, even though they don't necessarily have to, because they're protected in the Constitution to cultivate their own land, and don't really have to give anything to anybody. But that Fatongia, I think Isiashi Ilayu touched on it. That's a very strong, like I just say, a Tongan thing that still exists today. And it probably derives from that time, when during that old era, when people didn't have land, it was just cultivating and serving the Ho'eki, whatever region you lived in. But at the same time, you can move different parts. But that's just my thing. It's a lot deeper than this, just saying it was slavery and horrible and stuff. But I was like, well, if you have no land and you're staying on somebody's land, what do? You're cultivating somebody's land, and then you're paying whatever your fruits are to that person. So I don't know what do you expect else to do. But that's
Well,
just
see,
me. That's
no,
just me.
100%. And this is why I message these guys, right?
Yeah.
I said, guys, we're going on live in 30 minutes to address this fake news. Well, let me bring it up here, right? Because I invite these guys. I mean, I tell all these guys, like, if you are so confident in your position, come online. Let's talk.
Mm,
Nobody's gonna
mm,
get hurt, right? See, I put here going live in 30 minutes to address this fake news, right? Because it is such a weak thing to
mm,
defend. I mean, it's almost like tickling us to say, "Oh, look, Hamoa was because number one." If I were to take that position, which is not accurate,
mm,
like you said, what's the difference between that and what was going on in Hamoa? The
mm.
high chiefs there.
Well, Tua, and I'm just thinking, see, maybe how more. This is what happens when you've been taken over many times. The amount of chiefs that's allowed to happen with many various names. There's a lot of people who can hold titles. I don't think that was a thing in the Ha'amor back in those days, because you're gonna. I don't know, because I'm just saying. sometimes these title holders, man, anyone can be a Matai in Haamoa, but back in those days, I don't think that existed. But that's the thing, right? That's the difference. In Tonga, you don't need you don't just throw titles like it's almost like a candy that anyone
No,
can take,
yeah,
you know?
it loses its value,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And it's not tied, and you do that when it's not tied to generations upon generations of history and structure and tradition, right?
Mm,
When
mm,
there's certain families that have had certain names for hundreds to thousands of years,
mm,
you don't just go create a title. Like, no, 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 no. That
mm,
title has a long-standing tradition and a long-standing history that it doesn't get distributed like candy, like you're saying. So the first thing is there's no different than in Haamoa, and in fact, there were certain chiefs in Haamoa that were known to be cannibalistic.
yeah,
So they
yeah.
were eating people. They're eating
Mm,
people. Okay, so to this idea that somehow that wasn't the case in Haamoa is the first thing. I want to emphasize some of the things that you said, right?
mm,
This is more a function of creating private property really
mm,
than it is of slavery, because like you said, it is more than documented between William Mariner and George Vason.
mm.
People were freely moving. When you're a slave, you're not allowed to move
Correct.
from one place to another. You are locked down, and it is well documented between William Mariner and George Vason. There were families who were moving around, right?
Mm,
In between.
mm,
And even to the point, this is how freely the commoner was moving. When Muliki Ha'amea, the last Tu'iha Takalaua,
mm,
gave George Vason property,
mm.
George Vason was developing his property so well and it was becoming so prosperous. Guess what was happening? People were moving and staying with him,
Yeah.
right? Because they were like, oh, I mean, yeah, I'm here with this chief, but George Vason, who is a palangi
Yes,
in the
cultivating really well.
1800s,
Uh,
but he was growing, like he said, he was growing stuff. It was being very bountiful. So what happened? People would come and say, George Vason, can we
yeah.
live with you? I'll come and
Mm,
I'll work on your land.
mm, mm,
I will do this stuff, but can I just live with you?
mm,
Done. So George
mm.
Vason started to build
His
a group
influence.
of
Yeah.
people in influence.
Mm,
So once, and this goes to the point, like you were saying, this was a matter of who owned private property. And if you
mm,
owned private property, you had power and influence.
mm,
And so that's
mm.
really what it came down to. Now, yes, where there are certain people who treated other classes as, Fina Ulkalala kills the cook and stuff, but dude,
Yeah.
that happened everywhere,
Yeah.
right? And then I also want to remind people, you're looking at the Tongan or the Polynesian Empire at its weakest point, right? It was
Mm,
fracturing. If we go
mm,
back maybe 1,000 years to when it was stable, then there are certain evidences like Xiaoxi Ilayu shares. There were Aiki, right? There were people who were Aiki who were in their position because of blood and inheritance. Then there were
mm,
other people who were the Fatongia. They had special knowledge and skill
mm,
sets
mm,
that allowed them to gain certain influence and certain
mm.
power. Where it was, well, like you always mentioned, Masi, tattooing was
Yeah.
certain families had that skill set.
Yes.
Other families were good at building rocks or
Yeah.
ships or certain things, right? And so there were other ways when the Tu'itonga Empire was at its prime.
Mm,
It had multiple ways that a commoner could build influence and power. So that's the
mm.
first thing there. I do want to go through some of the comments because it's kind of funny to me
Yeah.
when we hear this, because I also think there's some important things that we have discussed here on the podcast that even our fellow Tongans don't fully
Mhm.
grasp. It says here, it's true, many Tongans don't fully grasp the profound impact that King George Tupou I had on Tonga by dedicating the nation and its people to the governed by God alone. He abolished many cultural practices that conflicted with biblical morals and principles. As a Tongan, I am grateful for the move of the Holy Spirit through King George Tupou I. That is the history of Tonga, I am proud to be a product of more so than our history before God was introduced to our people. Can you imagine if we were still under the old system? Brah, I don't think I'd even be here. But God's plans always prevail, and his purpose for Tonga was greater than anything we could have ever imagined. Even today, we see the blessings of that design, and it's up to us to continue walking in the foundation that was set for us, choosing faith over culture, truth over tradition, and God's will over worldly ways.
Interesting. Very interesting. Very
What are your
interesting.
thoughts on that, Masi?
I got comments on that. You kind of mentioned about the ways of the old. To me, if it wasn't for the ways of the old, we will be under the probably USA flag or the British flag
Yep.
of today. I mean, to me, like I said, it's you can tell the ones you can tell the ones their understanding of even Tongan history is very surface level. It's almost like it's almost limited because it's because of the old ways that it brings, let's just say, it allowed Christianity to prosper into Tonga, saves it allows Tonga to be Tonga now, because this person is speaking on that Tonga was only going to be not colonized because of what happened, let's just say, in the 1800s. No, no, no. This took years of acting like a ruler throughout Polynesia, and how a ruler would do that. You're going to give up some territory, which we did, losing a lot of the Ha'amoas, the Lalotonga, Uvea, Fata, but we're gonna keep the root of where we live, keep it untouched by the Palangis. That because of that, that's helped us to have a much positive view of the God of Jehovah, and that's why Tongans are much loyal to the God of Jehovah to today, is because we understand that it's the same God of the Lotumua, which is the same God with the Lotumui. So there's a lot of different things that, if it wasn't for the old ways, and like it or not, any society back in those old days, with our view of how society should function now, they were all brutal. In my opinion, they were all brutal. There was all black and white. It's not as gray like we in today's society, that we like to think things because we think we know more. But that, in my understanding, it's the old ways of managing an nation or an empire that helped us to navigate and let's just say survive colonization. That's just me, because if it wasn't for the old ways, Tonga is not going to be Tonga that we know today. So that's
No,
just me. My thoughts
100%.
there.
I agree. And we could maybe in the comments later on, we'll get into some more details, but I 100% agree. It
Yeah.
is not by chance that Tonga survived colonization. It is not by
Yeah.
chance. You can
Yeah.
go into the details and we'll talk about it. And this is one of the great revelations to me personally, the impact of Laufilitonga, the last
Mm,
to Itonga, on our independence and moving on to accept a god of Christianity to be our God, plays a significant role in my mind. But I think I'll save that comment for other comments here that we're going to walk through. Okay, so let's come down here.
but these are the good discussions too, that we have, because these are the discussions that helps people just understand history more, that Tonga was very sophisticated society back in those days. It wasn't just a a normal, just kind of almost like uncivilized or whatever. So that's, I don't know, that's these are the discussions that I think it's very good, and it's good we have these discussions.
Yeah, 100%. See, like right here, they're talking about the commoners. This Spelewale says, I am Tongan, and even I know this. I do not know how so many Tongans are so ignorant not to admit the specific history did exist. Now, there's certain parts of what they said that is true,
Mm,
right? But when you get into the details, you start to understand that there's so much more, like you're saying. And this is the problem with some of those comments, right? Here's one that says, now the question to ask is what people weren't allowed to marry into the Tu'itonga line anciently? The answer is Tongans. Okay.
Mm.
This is the kind of fake news that's really, really annoying, right? Because Samoana here is running around with this idea that the Tu'itonga only married Samoans.
Mm.
And that was the only thing that happened,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
The Tu'itonga had multiple wives, and the majority of the wives, many times, were from Tonga. We have stories of them, the wives being from Wallace and Futuna. We have stories of them coming from Tahiti. We have stories of the wives coming from Hawaii. So, see, this is the kind of stuff that's like, the Tu'itonga, blah, blah, blah. And the only reason why they say that is because why? The Kanokupolu, right? Which they push as the narrative. Oh, the Kanokupolu freed you guys. Well, that shows very little about that. And I'm waiting for that comment, and maybe it's later on here. But this is the kind of stuff that they can't seem to accept here. Because it is very clear that the Tu'itonga had multiple wives from Tonga.
Yeah, and there's even stories and a certain word, I forgot the term, of is the first time that they had the daughter of the Tangaloa line married into the Tu'itonga line. I forgot the certain the term, but yeah, it was happening. Like I said, it's not just a hot more like you brought up to us. It was within the whole vast of the Polynesian nation that was married the Tu'itonga, and not only that. I'm just saying, any parents with their children, their first goal is to, if they can elevate their family to marry the Tu'itonga, they were gonna do it. So it was just a Tu'itonga deciding if he wanted you or not, and it was for political reasons too. So,
yeah, and here's the interesting thing. You know, the Malietoa, the first Malietoa, he had multiple children. Guess what was one of the first things he did with his sons? Marry the daughter of the Tu'itonga.
Tu'itonga, yeah.
Why? Because that's where the power and influence, like you said, how do we elevate? You elevate through the marriages.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so why would the Malietoa, if they are the quote unquote supreme, why would you marry to the Tu'itonga? Because that elevates the Malietoa. Why would the Tu'itonga want that? Because that gives him family and what the new highest chief in the area is, and that hey, that brings a person into the family. Let's see here. I'm trying to see any thoughts on that, Mussy, while I look for
yeah,
it.
I'm just saying, I'm just looking through the comments. Looks like there was a lot of different opinions and commentary happened with this video that was going through. But yeah, no, because I'm just thinking too, like, you know, a lot of the areas, especially in that Talasiu area, a lot of names like reference to the East Polynesia, to Tahiti, and some other parts like the Pulu or Tamude or something. You know, that's a sign there
Yes.
that's a reference to a lot of, let's just say, a lot of children making during that time with the east side of Polynesia. Like I'm just saying, like, it was all over Polynesia, and that was, from my understanding, that was a lot of the Tui Hatagalawa line really kind of mixing with the creating offsprings with high ranking individuals from the East Polynesia. So it happened all over. So
not 100%. Like, here's another comment by Samoana here says, you think they would brag about the Kanokupolu since he freed them from being slaves, but they skip the Kanokupolu and bring up the Tu'itonga, who treated them the worst. Make it make sense. Right? And I want to bring something up here for people to really appreciate. Tupou the first, number one, never defeated Laufilitonga as a Tu'itonga. There is so much. There is an idea out there that You know what? Let me see if I can find the video here real quick. I
Yes,
think
because
I pulled it
that
up.
that that scuffle kind of, it was almost like a feel out thing. That he wasn't even the Tuitonga at that time. His father was still alive. He was just like the
A young
presumptive
chief,
title.
a young
Yes,
chief trying to make a
yes,
name for himself. He didn't know for sure if he would be the Tuitonga because the
correct.
Tuitonga has to name who the next
That's
heir
right.
is. Okay.
Yes.
So I really want to play this clip here. We've watched this video before and I queued it up just so we could watch it again
Okay.
to really nip this idea, the Samoana. Oh, you guys should think that Kanokupolu, he's the one that freed you and the Tuitonga was terrible. Relax, buddy. Relax.
Dynasties. Established around 900 AD, the Tuitonga was the paramount ruler of ancient Tonga. Later, two other branches sprung forth, Tuihatakalawa and Tuikanokupolu, usurping political power and influence from the Tuitonga.
Stop right there.
Mm.
Usurping political power. Right
Mm.
off the bat, you don't even understand why these kingly lines were created.
Yeah.
When you say usurp, the idea there is that the Tuihatakalawa and the Tuikanokupolu, through military force, remove this power from the Tuitonga.
Yeah.
That was never, ever the case.
Mm.
The history is, Kaulfo Nuafekai says, you know what? We've had some instability. Some ideas are he went on a military campaign out of Tonga to go and humble some of the insurgents. Some people say, you know what? He just wanted to give the Tuihatakalawa the opportunity to establish this new kingly line, because as long as the Tuitonga was consistently on Tonga Tapu, they would never fully recognize the Tuihatakalawa. So he had to leave to allow the Tuihatakalawa to establish himself.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
Mm.
Now, that was never because of war. Remember, it's a brother to brother. And one brother goes to Samoa, but came back every year for the Polo Polo.
Polo, yes. Yeah.
Masi, when the Tuitonga returns, when Tapu Osi returns and his son Telea returns, where does he build his langi, and why is that important to understand that this idea of usurping power from the Tuitonga is fake news, basically?
Yeah. Well, we kind of had a good discussion on it too, because he went back and built it in the Fonua Tanu, which was kind of managed and done under the Tuihatakalawa side. So it's just kind of saying maybe he would just did it, say, "Hey, I'm back, and I'm just letting you know that I'm back now." I'm done staying in Ha'amoa, but this is I'm back now to Tonga Tapu.
100%, right? Some of the stories are, like we've discussed with different people on the podcast, is when Tapu Osi comes back, I think his name was Mo'unga Tonga, he says, hey, you've been gone for 200-300 years, whatever it was. I've done my job. You asked me to run the my family, right? My ancestors, to run the administrative and the political responsibilities of the Polynesian nation. Now that you're coming back, can you reward our allegiance to the Tuitonga?
Yes.
And say, can you elevate us and relieve us of this responsibility? And what does the Tuitonga say? Yes, I'm going to elevate the Tuihatakalawa and make it more sacred, like me. Then we're going to create a new line to do the work. You got to remember that the Tuihatakalawa was built to do work, to do the administrative work. When you reward the Tuihatakalawa, or the house, some people say it's a house system. The Tuihatakalawa didn't come until Mo'unga Tonga, when the Tuitonga comes back. That's some of the different ideas. That when you reward the Tuihatakalawa, you elevate him and then say, you know what? We're going to create another kingly line to do the work. That's the Tuikanokupolu. Okay? And here's some interesting things. And I didn't know this until talking with Daniel Fale. There were some Tuikanokupolus who also became Tuihatakalawa. And I didn't know that. But that further proves this was not a military competition, right? This was the same family who's going to do the work. We even have stories of certain ancestors who were said, "Can you please be the Tu'i Kanokupolu?" And that ancestor says, "No, thank you. My body is not used to smoke. I'm not going to accept that Tu'i Kanokupolu line.
Yeah.
That would bring me lower in my status."
Mm.
And that actually caused some instability in the Tu'i Kanokupolu line, because for whatever reason, many of the descendants of the Tu'i Hatakalaua and the Tu'i Tonga said, "I don't want any part of the Tu'i Kanokupolu
Yeah.
line." Have a couple other stories, Masi, but any thoughts?
Yes, no, because we kind of discussed with the Tuikano side that it was pretty difficult to establish too, because a lot of the people who should have been bestowed the Tuikano ended up wanting to receive the Tui Hatagalawa line, because like you said, it was a lot of work. You're a new entity, a lot of work goes into to establish, and not only that, I think you kind of mentioned with the name Ngata too, with the reason why he started with him, because there was a limitation of what the Tuikano can do, and it was like your job was to manage the people and the political affairs of the Polynesian nation, right? And it was more of the Tui Hatagalawa and the Tui Tonga were more of the spiritual gatekeepers of the religion kind of thing. Because Ngata, in sense, was like meaning you're there, right?
There's a
kind of
limit.
brought it up.
This
There's
is
a
the
limit.
end.
This is this is your limit right here. So that's what I wanted to kind of share too, unless you had any additional
Yeah.
stuff.
Some of the additional storylines, and we just want to really re-emphasize, this people watch this on what, Sky News or whatever this is, ABC News, and they think, oh, the
Pacific,
Tu'i
yeah.
Hatakalawa and the Tu'i Kanokupolu usurped the Tu'i
Yeah.
Tonga. It's like, no. There were some heirs of the Tu'i Hatakalawa, right? Their father was still alive.
Mm,
They were heirs to the Tu'i Hatakalawa, but the instability of the Tu'i Kanokupolu line,
mm,
they were asked, "Can you please go and run the government?"
mm,
Go and run the government, and once you've stabilized it and your father and stuff passes away, then we will bring you to the Tu'i Hatakalawa, but at least
mm.
you've established at least some stability. And go ahead, Masi. Were you going to say something?
No, yes, and I was thinking too. The Tui Hatagalawa seems like it's always been helping the Tui Karupolu, because I think of what's his name? Who's the one? Who's the one that married Queen Salote? Tua? He was the title holder of
Oh,
Tui.
Maidefihi.
Mailefi. He saved. He brought back stability to the Tui Karupolu.
That's
And
a
you know
fair
what's so
point.
funny?
That's a
And you know
fair
what's so
point.
and you know what's so funny? He did that because of, and then now we're talking about history in the early stages of Tuika. Actually, maybe a lot of the stages with the Tuika Polo, it's been very on the brink of dissolving itself. But there's been a
Yes.
lot of injection of the Tui Tonga, the Tui Hatalawa inheritance of those titles, but their offsprings going to kind of stabilize. And I'm just thinking the most recent one was right, Tungi going and injected
To Queen
to
Salote.
marry Quintalote to
Yeah,
stabilize. And since then, it's been more stable than any time before of the Tuikanu Polu history.
exactly. And here's the interesting thing too, Masi, right?
Uh,
So just for all our brothers and sisters throughout Polynesia, but especially in Samoa,
mm,
it may be incorrect. And I would say, when I say maybe, I'm doing it on purpose, because it's not really a maybe. It's pretty much fact. The Tui Kanokupolu is not the line that's running Tonga today. It's the Tui Hatakalawa,
mm,
because Tongan protocol says father to son, father to son, father to son.
mm,
Tungi, who married Queen Salote, who was in a very difficult political position, because it wasn't what does the history say for thousands of years?
mm,
Father to son, father to son. And here's the scenario: father to daughter.
mm.
There is instability. There.
We,
Yes,
we got the British. We got the British high councilmen and consulate looking to take over Tonga.
yes. So it's not only that, and I agree 100%, taking over Tonga, But even within the Tongan culture, because in
Yeah.
that time frame, there our great grandparents, they still remembered the culture very clearly. Remember, we talked about the Fakamawe.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's father to
Yeah.
son. When
Mm.
it breaks from father and it's not a son,
Mm.
that's a unstable or unstable line. So what does
Yeah.
an unstable line mean?
Mm.
There could be challenges to that.
Yeah.
There could be cousins, uncles,
Yes.
people from the Tu'ihatakalaua line, people from the Tu'itonga line
Mm.
who could challenge and say, hey, there's problems.
Yeah.
That's not
Yeah.
a legitimate inheritance,
Mm.
right? Which is why it was ingenious that she married into the Tu'ihatakalaua heir, because Tungi is the Tu'ihatakalaua heir.
Yes. Yes.
So, with that being said, Tupou the fourth is not a Tu'ikanokupolu because you don't inherit from
Mm.
the mother the title.
Mm.
You inherit from the father. So,
Mm.
in theory,
Mm.
we're not talking about the Tu'ikanokupolu anymore. We're talking about the Tu'ihatakalaua.
Mm.
Okay,
Mm.
so that's one thing to keep in mind there. The other thing that I think it's also really important to understand here, and you bring up a good point, Masi, the Tu'ikanokupolu line has been an unstable line for forever. You know how we talked about that the Tu'ikanokupolu was a Matai system of voting?
Yes. Yes.
Yes, that's one idea that's discussed a lot. The question
Mhm.
is, why was it always kind of like a voting problem? Well, apparently, according to other ideas, and Daniel Fale shared this, it was a voting because it was so unstable.
Mm.
They didn't have father to son consistently. And so
Mm.
what happened was they always had to inject someone to try
Mm.
and bring stability, but you ran into two problems. The Tu'itonga descendants and the Tu'ihatakalaua, they don't want to be in the Tu'ikanokupolu line.
Mm.
They would try to attract a young prince. Hey, go
Yeah.
take the Tu'ikanokupolu
Mm.
line. And he would say,
Mm.
and why would I do that? Because that decreases my standing, my power and recognition. It's better for me to just have no title and stay with the Tu'itonga ties than it is to take the Tu'ikanokupolu line.
Mm.
That led to the instability. However, that instability became a great blessing overall because Tupou the
It
first
allowed. It
now
allowed
has
for
an
the first.
opportunity to get in there.
Mm. Mm.
But yeah, there's some interesting thought. Anything else, Masi, before we jump back to the video?
No, and the difference, right? The difference, the Polu, just like a lot of European lines that would die out if they didn't interject. Because apparently the Polu tend to only have one child, right? And if that child didn't
Yes.
survive, that created a lot of instability. While the Tu'itonga and the Polu, they tend to have many children, right? And there was only a few that were like stumble blocks, but because it was always I always go back to the new Tamato, you know, that one that I think it was Talaiha Pepe, was it no, Talatama, that didn't have
Talatama.
any
Yeah.
offsprings, and because it was the Tu'itonga way that you have to have an offspring, they made the coconut be the offspring and then called the Talaiha Pepe to be the Tu'itonga, and that kind of went on. But it just shows you having offsprings is very difficult to have in some because that's a big thing to make sure to secure your line. But if you're only having very few, and if they because mortality, the mortality rate those days, you can die easily. So my understanding is the Polo, because it was fairly new, they tended to only have like only a very few children, but they wouldn't survive, and that causes instability
Problems.
multiple times. And that's why
Yes.
they had to inject the Tui Hatagalawa to kind of fill in and hopefully have some offspring, and then that would be legitimate, right, for it to pass down to the Tui
And
Polo
you
line.
bring up a very good point, Masi, and that's actually the key thing that Daniel mentioned. There was like 2 or 3 generations of the Tu'ikanokupolu that only had one child. Okay. Now, this is something that just crossed my mind. Why is the Tu'ikanokupolu only having one child? And this is just an idea out there. Because if you're from an outer island, other parts of the Polynesian Empire, and you have a choice, your daughter to marry the Tuitonga, the Tui Hatakalaua, or the Tui Kanokupolu, which one do you think you're going to send your daughter to marry?
You be going to the Tuitonga, right? That's the first choice.
That's the
If
first option.
you're not selected, then go to the Tui Hatakalaua, and if you miss that one, then you go to the Tui Kanokupolu. So
Yeah. Because why is it that the Tuitonga and the Tui Hatakalaua don't have that problem,
yeah,
but the Tui Kanokupolu is having that problem? Right? And it may be because now this goes back to the wisdom of maybe Kaulfonua Fekai. When he installed the Tui Hatakalaua, what does he do? He leaves.
Yeah.
He leaves. And what does that do? Everyone around Tongatapu at the capital, who do they all look to?
the
Tui
Tui
Hatakalaua.
Hatakalaua. Yeah.
What happened when they created the Tui Kanokupolu? The Tui Hatakalaua and the Tui Tonga don't leave Tonga.
Yeah, they're still there. They're still there. Yeah.
So it really diminishes the influence and the rank of the Tui Kanokupolu, and that could have led. This is maybe one of the flaws of adding that third line is the Tui Tonga and the Tui Hatakalaua stayed behind. You're right. They didn't give the Tui Kanokupolu 200 years, 300 years to establish themselves. And so the intermarrying and so forth goes to the higher two. Now, that is one of the problems that I wanted to highlight a little bit that Daniel mentioned. Because the Tui Kanokupolu only has one child and one child, when it goes 2 or 3 generations and there's a problem, you can't go up 1 or 2 generations and say, oh, your cousin or your whatever can come down. There's no one, there's no options.
Yeah.
So they have to go and ask the Tui Hatakalaua or someone from the Tui Tonga descendants to come down. But what happens is a lot of them are taking other titles and other responsibilities that in their mind is greater than the Tui Kanokupolu, and they don't want to deal with it. So yeah, that's just some interesting stuff there.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's come back here. So once again, this idea that the Tui Kanokupolu was some shiny coin and was like the real game changer and the difference and whatever. Slow down. That's not the case. If, like you were saying, Masi, if you're just looking at the thin layer above, okay. But when you get into the details, it's a whole different story. And this is why being close to the capital, being close to those who know the oral history, being close to where all this happened is important, because these are the nuances that make the difference. And this is like your comment earlier, Masi. Maybe this is the significance of never being colonized. I don't know. I'm just saying that seems very convincing in this conversation.
Yeah, because you know what? If this thing came out, you know what, and we saw it, we're like, they're probably right, because we don't know we don't know our origin history. You know, let's just say we were taken over by Britain. People have migrated out of Tongatapu, or people married other people and they didn't stay in Tongatapu, and then oral histories are not passed properly, and then
we just understand how Europe transfers power.
British came and they say, oh, these ruins are waste time. Let's demolish it to build more housing. I'm just saying that's the Western way of doing things. They didn't care about what was your history. They're gonna do their own thing. And then at the end of the day, Tua, you and I would say, maybe this news thing is true. We don't have anything to counter that, but thank goodness, a little small. There was the Kifonua Tuhe Oceani. Thank goodness, a little country, the Kingdom of Tonga, and that little ocean survived colonization. Malo,
yes, malo. Let's come back and let's finish this.
Who then became a spiritual figure instead.
Kapauna ko tau mo ui ko ni I he taimi ko ia ko o tua I tui tonga ai. Pe topu tapu hono sino pa ko founga o tau hi tau tolu ki ai na e fai ki herere ita. Ko tau tolu ko ke fai ho tau fatongia. Na e o mai ai ke tau hi aki. Ki nau tolu. Kapau te utala whakatata. Tanga fe tu ai o tulangi. Lotonga I heni ai toko lau kilu.
Mm.
Koe nau whai e ngā ue koe o tulangi. O kutalaki he ngahi a honi tōku ana e whaka ngā ue pōpura ina tōru. No, koe tui Tonga na e toko tahape. Ka pau na anau pōpura. O sifuoroa hono tā mate e tu I tapuange.
And I want to retranslate that.
Mm.
He's not saying punishment. He's saying slaves,
Mm.
right? If they were slaves, but they're translating it as punishment. And this is why I'm bringing this up, because what was the comment? Oh, they were just slaves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And he's saying, no. It's not that. Right? It's a religious devotion. That's what drove the Tu'itonga's influence. That's why he could give the administration and the political power to the Tu'ihataqalaua and then again to the Tu'ikanokupolu and still have power and influence over the people, because it was a religious thing. Right? And I'll come back to it in regards to Tupou the First and Laufilitonga. But any comments on that, Masi?
No, good point to it, because when see, the Tu'itonga is very smart. It's like that's what happens when you have so many descendants and you know the politicking, because if you can make yourself, because Tu'itonga was very smart. If you can make yourself more of a religious keeper of the ancient religion, you really live the life of just an observance, and you can delegate, because we already know what happened. When you consolidate a lot of the power, there's a chance to be assassinated.
Risk for assassination,
right?
yeah.
You gave some power and prestigious responsibility to the Tu'ihataqalaua that helps you to kind of diversify your power, but at the same time you kind of hold the higher power because you kept the spiritual power. That's really what's kept Tonga unique. It's its spiritual was it devout to the spiritual gods kind of thing, and then the mediator is the Tu'itonga, right? That's a smart thing, because you can keep that, give the political stuff of especially managing the marriages or certain alliances, because that can be deadly, let's just say, because you make a mistake, you can get some other parts of the Polynesian nation not happy with you that can assassinate you, because that's what happened to some of the previous Tu'itonga. But the Tu'itonga was just that to me, that's what happens. You always touch on it too. When you have a DNA of just leadership after leadership for so many generations, you just tend to know how to preserve your power and to elevate yourself and maintain that power. And the best way to maintain that power of the Tu'itonga was to hold the spiritual aspect of your responsibility. So, hey, smart on the Tu'itonga, but that's what happens when you have so many Tu'itonga titles. That, man, it's been so long. There's like a lot of sayings that people always try to figure out how many Tu'itongas there are, but no one can really know how many because it lasted so long.
No, 100%, 100%, and people don't understand that. When you only look at the Tu'itonga from a Western perception, like all these comments on TikTok, right? They have no idea what they're talking about. But they're going to come here and say, oh, the Tu'itonga only married the Samoans and all the Tongans were, slaves and they couldn't do anything. It's like, number one, the slaves comment, inaccurate. Number two, marriage only to Samoa, inaccurate. Oh, the Tu'ikanokupolu saved the Tongans, inaccurate. It's partially true, but I want to talk about, we'll probably close the night with revisiting that story between Laufilitonga and Tupou the First. But let's see if there's I wanna come back. Let's see if we come back to the TikTok comments here, because I want to touch on as many of those as possible, because
awesome.
There's just so much to try and answer. It's kind of ridiculous in many ways, but
but this is the uphill battle, and that's what happens
yes.
when you don't have an origin story and it's a lot of confusion. Everyone doesn't know which one is the right one, so it is what it is. But hey, at the same time, it's fun too.
Yes. Well, and going along that lines, here's a prime example of they tagged us in this video and goes, And the response was, at least tag me in something meaningful, right? But you know what? They were saying like, hey, Polynesian Eyes, can you explain this in your podcast? Like, oh, we got ya, because you're just a bunch of slaves and the Tui Kanokupolu, this. So I said, okay, yeah. I mean, it wasn't even going to make this an episode because it's kind of weak sauce. But hey, if you really want it, I guess that's a need, right?
No,
If
because
it's
I was
a need,
no
we'll
to
that need.
yeah, no too. I'm just thinking like when I was living in Samoa, some of the some of the older elders of the Samoan elders, when they see a young chief, you know, try to do something and they don't know much, they always call it, kamamoshi, meaning you're still new to the game, you're still new and you think you know the history, but you don't know the history. So we always say kamamoshi, man,
So is
kamamoshi.
that because of like mosi mosi, like small
Yes,
guy, like
yes, and
mosi?
tamamoshi, and that's what the Samoan elders would always say when they see a young one coming. They think the young one has figured it out.
Yeah. So here's some of the comments here. He won't address this video, Uso, because it doesn't fit his "We Are Superior" agenda. Guys, I'll repeat this again. There was no such thing as the country of Tonga, the country of Ha'amoa, the country of
Mm,
Uvea and Futuna.
mm,
It was all the Polynesian Empire, the Tu'itonga Empire.
pretty much, yeah, yeah,
There is no, Tonga is more superior than Ha'amoa. That would be like me telling my brother, I'm superior than you when we are made out of the same blood, when we're
mm,
made out of the same thing.
mm,
Don't fall into just because there was colonization going on that somehow the fake lines built or put in place by the colonizers, that's now reality, that's the truth.
mm,
Ha'amoa as a country never existed until colonization. That's a
mm,
fact, right? And you
yeah.
can resist that all you want, but that's the
Mm,
reality.
mm. It was a, and that's why we always kind of mention it Ha'amoa because it was the perfect term to identify a certain group of people
A
that
family, yeah.
associated with that clan because it's a Moa clan. Correct.
Hey, Masi, can you read King Mixed here and then the response by Samoana here because it's in Samoan? Just kind of give the
So
translation.
so he's going iya se, and then he say five masia lofa o le va'aiga foi o mata because the real sama e five fuafua because e leo o le vao. So he's saying so with the five he's saying five masia lofa do it like with love and
Ui.
and then he's like, "Va'ainga for your mata, you're seeing with your eyes the real Samoa." And then he says, "If I for cause he's like, do it carefully and organize, cause it's don't make it go to the vow kind of thing. You know,
Oh, like
he's gonna say,
animalistic or make it
so
violent.
yes, be civil and stuff like, but that's what they say. Okay."
Okay. I love this part. Admire the research. See, this is why
Oh,
you believe stuff that has no. They say, "Oh, the only ones who bring receipts are the Tu'imanua." Is this the
yeah,
receipts?
yeah.
Like this reminds me of a picture of someone who took a check and tried to go to the bank, right?
Mm,
And they
mm.
spent like 150, but they spell it as just the number one, and then in 50, right, is FIDI 150.
Eh,
$150. That's what the receipts over here look like to me.
yeah.
Read
No, too,
the yeah.
and I'm just thinking like, man, I don't know if you get many podcasts that can speak a lot of in the Polynesia because you've been to Samoa. I've lived in Samoa in Ha'amoa for a while. We lived in Tonga, and then we get certain knowledges from Tevi Tafale as he's kind of discovering our true origin. So like, man, I'm just saying the amount of information you can get from a podcast regarding Polynesian history, man. I don't know if you can get it anywhere else than
That's
the
a fair point. Yeah.
Polynesian Eyes podcast that gives. And I'm just saying, we give an idea and we just say we speak it from what we experience. You don't get many podcasters that's been around quite a few of the Polynesian islands. We can even throw in there. We lived in Hawaii for many years, and now I'm
Yeah.
living in part of Maori, Aotearoa, New Zealand. I don't know many Polynesians that's actually said they've lived in multiple
Of the
islands
islands in
of the
Polynesia. Yeah.
Polynesian nation. So like what we give is like we don't just pluck it from thin air because a lot of the Polynesian podcasters, a lot of them only know been in Ha'amoa, only a few that's been in live in Tonga. So in Hawaii, so their span of understanding of different um, cultural evolution because of the separation for many years of the Polynesian nation is not there because a lot of them haven't lived there. So that's why I just explain stuff like this because not many people have our experience to when we talk about Polynesian history. But that's all. That's all I have to say.
Yeah. No, 100% agreed. Read some of these comments here, and then even some of the Samoan ones. Start with
So
Samoana.
Samoanas, that's all English. Konga. So what?
No, start with
Uso,
the one where it says Uso. I've known these things.
oh yeah. Uso, I've known these things for years, but I always bite my tongue because we are brothers with the Kongas. But when I kept seeing all the made up stories by some Tongans on here, I had to post SMH.
Samoana, you probably should have just bit your tongue off. You should have just bit it off, in my opinion. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
now, I mean, yeah. What does Wati17 says? Because he comments a lot about the podcast too.
He goes, langa e langa langa ma'a fua wa ai ai le lima le loyaka. So I think he's saying langa langa ma'a fua wa ai, like ai lima, meaning like we've tied their hands and
Oh,
giving their perspective. So that's kind of
they
what he's saying.
they dropped the mic on us like they headshot.
It's
Headshot.
almost like they've tied our hands that we can't do anything about it. But like I said, it's this is still small kind, like the Hawaiians say.
Yeah.
Still bubble gums. Still bubble
Bubble
gums.
gums. Oh yeah, way. Yeah. So I don't know, man. That's interesting at the least, and that's let me see if there's any other. Oh, here's
Other one.
another one right here. Oh, read this Samoan one by John D, and then this next one, Samoa Atoa. I want to dive into it a little bit more.
Yeah. So kau kupu le ngafa o Samoa a lai fai mai le au konga o lako e o ngā mea o le Pasifika a lea whaalongo aku ngā o lako polonga I lalo ifo le kuikonga ai kele. So he's pretty much saying the kaukupu is kind of like a tupu with same
The
thing
youth?
with the ngafa. Yes, like we've kind of sprung from the descendants of Samoa, and then the Tongans are saying that we are the owners or the one or sprung up in charge of the Pacific, and then he listened and he says Olea Fa'alonga, and now he's listening to this video saying that the Tongans were Polonga, kind of like Popula to the Tui Tonga. So he's saying, how can we do that? How can we be? He's probably just saying, how can we be leaders in the Pacific if we were always enslaved to the Tui Tonga? Kind of like that. So
Makes zero sense.
Yeah, well, he's trying to say, how can we, if we were supposed to militarize, and he's thinking of a militaristic point of view that we're supposed to control all of Tonga, but how can we control all the Pacific if we can't? If every Tongan was Popula to the Tui Tonga.
Oh my goodness! It's number one. Even in the 1800s,
yeah,
the Tongans were going and fighting in Fiji. I even heard stories of the Tongans going to Ha'amoa to protect the Wesleyan missionaries there because some of the Wesleyan missionaries were being attacked, right? And stuff like that. So, and this is before the Tui Tonga was abolished. This was before Tupou the First fully frees the people. So you can run a military campaign, even if it's quote unquote slavery, which we've already pointed out. It's not quote unquote slavery. It's a question about private property, right?
Yes.
That's why the United States says every citizen has a right to private property, because that allows maximum freedom for the individual, right? So, and then my question is like, how can you say that Samoa was the center of an entire empire when they never even governed themselves? Even if we were to concede that the idea of slavery limited Tonga from being an entire empire, but it consolidated power in Tonga. We know that for a fact.
Yeah.
Multiple islands, and that's something Samoa can't say.
Yeah. No, and that's what that John Doe is kind of saying. So that Kaukupu, now I'm just reading that the Kaukupu le Ngafao Samoa, saying that we came from Samoa. And we touched about that, saying that you can say Samoa is a progenitor from the female side, because in order to inherit title of a Tuitonga is always that Tongatapu male residing in the area that inherits the Tuitonga line. So yeah.
Not 100%. Here's another interesting one. I didn't even look at it that way, but you are right. The flesh of Upolu freed the Tongans from slavery, especially the Tuitonga. I have a question for Samoana. Where was Tupou the First's mother and father from?
Yeah.
They were both from Tonga. Okay. So once again, you can say that. And then once again, the flesh of Upolu was a title that the Tu'ihataqalawa and the Tu'itonga didn't even want to take for many generations, because it was the lowest. So if you want to say the flesh of Upolu, one could make the argument it was the lowest of the kingly lines. So your so-called sacred blood from Ha'amoa was the lowest of those. The flesh of Upolu, right? And so,
and I'm just thinking too, when was it Ngata that married the high chief, the high chief's daughter. Thousands of them came from Ha'amoa, because a lot of them came not only to support the woman that was going to marry Ngata,
but Ngata
also
needed people. Yeah.
Ngata needed people to work, and those people were willing to leave Upolu, because I think they understand that Tuigapolu was the higher elevated title compared to any
Then
title that
staying
was
back.
in Ha'amoa.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because we're talking about thousands of people that came and settled all of that Hihifo side.
Yeah.
And
that was critical, because the Tu'itonga and the Tu'ihataqalawa didn't leave.
They took up a lot of the human resources that were already on the island.
Yes.
Right?
and you're not going to convince the families that have been on Tongatapu for generations to go and work on the lowest kingly line. And we're talking about not just the quote unquote commoners or the slaves, but you need the middle management. You need some of those chiefly titles to support you. And if they're saying, hey, no, I'm going to go work for the Tu'ihataqalawa or the Tu'ikan or the Tu'itonga, that's why he had to import that. Right? And we even see this today. This happens, and this is a prime example. When there is a noble that the heir doesn't take the title, right? He doesn't take the title, but he keeps the land, and a new person, noble, who's not the direct descendant, comes and takes the title. You know what they do a lot of times? They go and cut the land that no one owns that's under the noble, and guess what they say? People, come and stay on the land. I'm going to give it to you for free. I'm going to give it to you for free. Come and stay on the land. You know why they do that? Because they have no loyalty from the families that have been there for thousands of years. And in reality, he can't go and tell them, come and fua my kavenga. Because many of them on the family level are probably more achy than him.
Yeah.
So what does he do? He imports new people and gives them new land. That's exactly what happened with the Kanokupolu. Being the lowest of the kingly lines, he's not going to convince all the other young chiefs, hey, sacrifice your political, whatever social influence, come to me. And they're like, no, I'm going to stay close to the Tui Hatakalao, Tui Kanokupolu. So what does he do? We're going to go to Ha'amoa and tell them, you can move closer to the capital. I'll give you land. I'll give you a title, right? And because I need people. He's doing it not because he's a kind guy and he wants to be friendly. He's doing it because he needs the manpower to do the work. And the Tui Tonga and the Tui Hatakalaua staying behind sucks up all the human capital.
Yeah.
Right? But what does he have? He has some land. Once again, that was the wisdom of Kaulfo Nuafekai. When he installed the Tui Hatakalaua, he left. Right? But yeah, and maybe that's another reason why they had the name Ngata Masi. It was not only your role and responsibility, but it's gonna be real severely hampered or disadvantaged because we're not leaving. We're not leaving Tonga Tapu. For all intents and purposes, it was like a penalty almost, right?
Yeah.
You're going to do a job here where you don't have a lot of human capital. You have some land. You don't have a lot of religious power or influence, but you got to do all the work. It's not a fun situation to be in.
No. It's almost like you're doing the CEO's job, but you having the board of the chair, that's in charge of the CEO, up just making sure that you're doing all the work, and they're just there when they have meetings. When you come and report, the CEO comes and reports to the chair of the board what he's been doing. But the chair of the board is more of an observation, which the Tui Tonga and the Tui Hatagala were doing, and the CEO was doing all the work, making sure they have enough workers to do everything and all the affairs, the daily affairs.
Masi, I wouldn't even say CEO. You had the president, right? The president of the board who actually influences all the decisions. You have that's the Tui Tonga. The CEOs, the Tui Hatakalaua, who just sat and observed. It is like the general manager, the middle manager, right? So basically, he has all the responsibility of the CEO and the president, but only the pay of a regional manager, and he has to run the whole company, an international company. Now you know why. Now you know why someone who is a vice president over a whole organization wouldn't even take the regional manager position. He said, I get paid less, more responsibility, and no one appreciates me. Flesh of Upolu right there. Right? That's the flesh of Upolu right there.
Yeah, that's funny. That's a good one. No, that's a good one. I think that's a much accurate one.
So
because that's why it was very difficult. Like we always just say, man, Faraofa, that line, because there was how many people from the Tui Tonga descendants and the Tui Hatakalawa descendants made it a very hard time just to get them to fill in because they didn't want to deal with
they didn't want it.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we even have family history of some of the ancestors saying
no.
He said, the famous saying is, my body has never touched smoke before. Right? That's what they said when the almighty flesh of Upolu title was presented to them. They said, my body's never touched the smoke. Was his way of saying, no, I don't want to be the Kanokupolu.
Hey, but I always think, man, thank goodness for those humble, high-ranking individuals that came and saved the Tupou line. Because if it wasn't for that, Chef Tupou the first wouldn't be able to execute his special duty to preserve Tonga. So, malo.
Yes, and I want to close it with this. Now that we've expanded that the Tui Tonga, Tui Hatakalaua, and the Tui Kanokupolu was never a establishment of power through military usurping, like that one video said. They took it out. It was given, right? It was given and assigned, and it was organized for each line to take a responsibility, we come back to Laufilitonga, the last Tu'itonga, and Tupou the first of the kingly lines of today.
Mhm.
And let's look at a couple things. Tupou the first never attacks, quote unquote, or invades Mu'a.
Yeah.
Right?
Mhm.
And they never fight each other.
Mhm.
So the question is, why is that? It is that because of what we just talked about. The Tu'itonga's power and influence was not tied to military or political.
Yeah.
It
It
would
was,
make zero sense for Tupou the first to attack the Tu'itonga, because that would only hurt him. That would only hurt him, and it wouldn't achieve anything. And that's also why Mu'a never had a fort.
Yes. Yes.
Right? There was no
Yeah.
reason. It was a holy place. It was
Yes.
a religious place. You
Yes.
only go there for religious purposes. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I want to erase that fake news that I hear all the time. Tupou the first defeated the Tu'itonga, and that's why he got into power. Fake news. Let's remove
evidence.
that out of your
No
head.
evidence for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even the land tells you there was no evidence of any battles being held in Mu'a. You know?
No, 100%. Right?
No,
So we
Tua,
go ahead,
I have
Masi.
something. I have something I want to say too. This shows you the loyal of how spiritual Polynesians were, and the people who were followers of the Tu'itonga, or how they viewed the Tu'itonga, because it's very different from Western perception. Because remember, Jerusalem is like the holy place for a lot of Christians, but it was one of the few places that was, I think, the number one city that was fought for many years by
Yeah.
Westerns. But it was a different level of view and sacredness in with the Tu'itonga, mostly living in Mu'a, that they said, there's no war. We're not gonna do anything to bring it down, because at the end of the day, the spirituality connection with all of Polynesia with this thing, I'm gonna be eradicated probably the fastest, or I'm gonna have so much more enemies. So there's no point to do anything near Mu'a. I'm just saying, like, I'm just thinking, like, just a different, just to bring an example for our viewers, because Jerusalem is the sacred place with many religions, even Islam. But man, there was a lot of wars fought there. It was almost like it was almost like any other city, but it was fought for because it was sacred to them. But the Polynesian perspective of sacredness, and probably the amount of influence, because the Tu'itonga was the spiritual home in Mu'a, because a lot of the Tu'itongas lived there. It was better for them not to go near it, because what's the evidence, like you mentioned, Tua? There was no forts there to defend the spiritual capital place of Polynesia. So I don't know. I just thought if that made sense, Tua, but I don't
No,
know.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Right? So I really want to put this together, because there's this idea that the Kanokupolu is the one that freed. And I agree. The action of doing the freeing of the people, yes. But guess what? That's the job of the Kanokupolu. That is a political and a administrative duty of the Kanokupolu. That's his job. His job is to execute the political and the administrative affairs of the kingdom. Okay?
Mm.
However,
Mm.
I'm going to show this, that down to the very last Tu'itonga, the Kanokupolu could not do anything unless the Tu'itonga authorized it to be so, from a spiritual sense. Because what's more powerful than direct or hard power? Soft power.
Soft power. Mm.
Yeah? The Kanokupolu was empowered to have hard power. What's hard power? Politics, military.
The dangerous
Right?
one, yeah, because you're involving with the political affairs of
The hard work.
the government. Yes.
Yeah. When you're doing the political and the military, what are you facing? Political challenges, military challenges, administrative challenges.
Mm.
When you're the soft power, you can influence these things without getting into what we would call the messy or the dirty work. That's really why the Tu'i Hatakalawa and the Tu'i Kanokupolu were established. It was to do the messy work, the dirty work, right? And we're coming now, let's come back now to two things. First, because Mu'a was the capital and the Tu'i Tonga was the head of the quote-unquote old religion, you know, when Tupou the first was going around destroying all the, what a lot of people say is the Lotu Motua,
Yeah.
it wasn't really the old religion. The old religion was headquartered in Mu'a. You know what Tupou the first was like cleansing? It was like this new religion that was popping up of worshiping your ancestors.
Yes,
Where-
yes, because
where
of the
you're- yeah.
decaying of the ancient religion, right? Because the Tu'i Tonga was
Yes.
already crumbling at that point. It was just really consolidated just with the Tonga Islands. Yeah.
Yes. And so Tupou the first was going around and destroying all these shrines that were dedicated to ancestors that were being worshipped, and all these religious practices that wasn't necessarily tied to the Tu'i Tonga, right? But it was tied to these new gods that were popping up. So that's what Tupou the first is cleansing. Now, when Tupou the first is rising, he has one huge weakness in his entire scheme. He doesn't have the soft power. He doesn't have it because the Tu'i Tonga is there. This is the original weakness of the Tu'i Kanokupolu. It's showing its head, right? Yeah. And what is it? The Tu'i Hatakalaua has ended, but the Tu'i Tonga is still there. So the Tu'i Kanokupolu cannot consolidate that power, but there is a military threat to independence. There is an administrative threat. And what's the last threat? A religious threat, right? And so what happens is, and it's, to me, it is miraculous. And this is where we say that Tu'i Tonga had a significant piece in freeing Tonga and maintaining Tonga as an independent nation. You know what the Tu'i Tonga does? He's not attacked. He's not defeated. He's not told you must bow and give allegiance to the Tu'i Kanokupolu, Tupou the first. The Tu'i Tonga, out of his own free will, with no military or political threat, he goes to Tupou the first and says, the Tu'i Tonga line will end with me, right? Freely.
Yeah. Self-dissolve himself.
Self-sacrifice, right? He says, the Tu'i Tonga ends with me. And that's not all. Because even that wouldn't have been enough. What he then says is, I'm going to bestow upon you a Taumafakava. And why is that important? That is what transfers the soft power. That is what transfers that religious or that sacredness, because the Taumafakava or the Furi Taunga was only for one person.
The Tu'i Tonga.
The Tu'i Tonga. Right? So it does that. And I really want to emphasize, and I think you brought up this point, Masi. In New Zealand and in some of our other islands and brothers and sisters, it wasn't necessarily the military of Europe that came and conquered them. Who ended up conquering themselves? Right? It was them fighting with each other.
The instability of having somewhat of a structure that and this is the thing, right? And you brought it up to that was very interesting. I think it was a Tu'i Tonga Pau. He asked Captain Cook, "What are you doing here?" I don't know if that crossed the mind of many of our Polynesian brothers and sisters.
Captain Cook said that was the only person who asked him that question.
Only ask him, and that's what I'm saying, right? When you don't have the DNA and you're empire is shrinking and it's really consolidating to a small geographical area, and then you're having the other islands who have to kind of think for themselves when they had a structure before, when everything was kind of under the Tu'i Tonga let's just say, nation, empire like. So when the Europeans came, the Tuitonga losing its influence, and then it was kind of like right picking, because now you're creating a vacuum, right?
Yeah.
People are sorting out each other's kind of power and build their kind of own, let's just say, only a few other of our Polynesian island, Polynesian neighbors kind of did it for themselves. Kamehameha is a good example, right? The dissolve of the Tuitonga Empire leaves a vacuum. He was able to unite the Hawaiian islands to under one monarchy with Kamehameha. So I'm just saying that's what happens when Europeans come and there's no structure. You let them fight themselves when they're almost killed themselves, and not only that, you entice them with steel, with money, with you know, you can say with alcohol, because it was very prevalent here in New Zealand. The amount of alcohol they will sell here, and then get them all, let's just say, addicted to those things. You allow more Europeans to come, and then now the Europeans are the majority, and then you find out you're the minority. Now they don't need to take orders from you,
And
and
buy
then
all the
what
land.
happens?
And
Buy all
buy
the
all the
See,
land.
and then it's lost under your feet, and then what's going on? You, as an individual, you can't move on to what's better for yourself, because you feel like you need to keep fighting for something that is very, like I said, it's now I would argue you're not even the number two. After, I'm just speaking here in New Zealand right now, it's the Caucasian. Then second, I would say, is the Asian, and then to now you're number three, because now you're not progressing as a people, because right now you always keep fighting. You're not help. You're a lot of the future generations are being caught up in being in state care. They're not being raised properly within their families. So then the prosperity is not not increasing the standard of living for the next generation. So it's very difficult, and
Yes.
that's what happens when you can go back to the times of before. It's unfortunate, but like I said, Polynesian as a whole, we all need to be supportive to one another, that Tonga was able to survive, so we can explain our history. At the same time, kind of give a understanding, the glimpse of how our ancestors were sophisticated. They weren't just fighting each other, and then the Palangis came and took over and whatever. But that's
No,
just me. Sorry,
100%.
I'm gonna rant
No,
over there.
that was good, because this comes back to what does it say in Proverbs? Where there is no vision, the people die.
Mm,
Okay.
that's a good point.
Now, what you're describing in these scenarios is there's not enough vision to unify the people. There's not enough vision amongst the leaders who have fractured power to come together, to be united, to defend themselves against the invasion, and not necessarily a military invasion, but like you're saying, a land invasion by buying the land, a political invasion, a religious invasion.
And immigration invasion,
Exactly.
like
So exactly that scenario. Now let's go back to Tupou the First, who's consolidated all the political and then administrative power, but he doesn't have the religious power, the soft power, and it's fractured in Tonga. The Catholics are all behind Laufilitonga because he has that power. The Methodists or the Wesleyan, they're with Tupou the First, right? So there's a big split. Tupou the First is under serious threat of colonization. This is where the vision comes. Like you were mentioning about Pau, who asks, Cook, what are you doing here? Why does he ask him that? Because Tongans understand colonization. They understand empire building. They understand you don't spend the resources to travel thousands of miles just for a holiday and a vacation like we do today.
Just to give us some sheep and some horses and some cows. No, it's bigger than that. Eh?
They didn't want to just come and give us some diseases for free. They wanted something, right? So just imagine this. Laufilitonga, the Tuitonga, who by all rights has a line that goes thousands of years
Mm,
older than the Tuikanokupolu, right?
mm,
And he sits there and says, I could challenge Tupou the first. I can undercut him,
mm,
right?
mm.
And I don't even have to beat him. And I guarantee you, my gut feeling is the Catholics are whispering that into Laufilitonga, is my
They,
personal belief.
they want another civil war to happen. That's for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're saying, hey, look, we got France, we got Spain,
Yep.
we got all these Catholic states,
Yeah.
right? And we'll back you. You know, you
Mm,
in challenge. And what does Laufilitonga do? He says, no,
mm,
I am going to sacrifice the Tuitonga title. For what purpose? To protect my people.
yeah.
And that to me, you know, that comment from TikTok, oh, it was the flesh of Upolu who freed them.
Mm,
If you want to just scratch at the lowest, the highest level and not get into the details, well, maybe yeah, it's kind of true. You know, he had the Kanokupolu title, but that's what happens when you don't know and you don't have the rich history and the knowledge and the
mm,
thousands of years of empire and government running. Laufilitonga says, I'm going to sacrifice this title and we're going to install the new one. And do you know where he probably got that idea from? When it
so,
went from Tangaloa to the Tuitonga.
mm, mm,
There was a Kava ceremony established,
mm-hmm.
there was a sacrifice, and the old must die so that the new may come forward. That's why the Tangaloa line
Mm.
doesn't exist anymore, the title
Yes.
of Tangaloa, because it had to die. Because as long as the Tangaloa title is there, the Tuitonga cannot thrive. It cannot move forward. And Laufilitonga recognized that in the unique circumstances of foreign influence, where the capital of the Polynesian nation is at risk of falling, that unification of power and influence needed to happen, and that his role as the Tuitonga was no longer viable to do that because you needed a military and an administrative role to do it, and that wasn't the Tuitonga's role anymore. The
Mm,
Tuitonga's role was to be a religious leader, and he had accepted Christianity. He
yeah.
was a Catholic, and
Mm,
he said, "You know what? There is a religion component here. If I give up and sacrifice the Tuitonga, and I give Tupou the first a Taumafakava, it will
legit.
empower him to save the people and the country and independence and the Polynesian nation to have a starting point to restore our history and to unite our people. That is vision. That is
Yes.
inspiration.
Yes.
That is another evidence of the Polynesian nation being centered and being driven out of Tongatapu. Those are my closing words, Masi. You can close us out for the evening.
No, thank you, Tua, for starting the show today. I'm glad I was able to join you this evening. I want to thank all the viewers for your contributions and always supporting us, and always been uh, you know, following, a follower of this show. We really appreciate your guys support. Just to add on, Tua, it's really amazing, especially with the last Tuitonga, Laufilitonga, legitimizing the Tuikang Polu Tupou the first, especially Xiaoxi Tupou the first, because it absolutely left no question when he died who was the one the Tongan people should support politically and show loyalty to was to do Tuikang Polu Xiaoxi Tupou the first, because like I said, he did it. He could have just passed away and not do anything, but he actually, before he passed away, was to, like you said, to give him the knowledge to set up his Taumafakava, so it leaves no question to any last remaining Tongans who are followers of the Tui Tonga to say who they should show their support when I'm gone. So it's pretty amazing, very visionary, and very humbling, and a good example sacrificing your self-interest at times for the greater good. And I think that's a good example of that was displayed by Laufilitonga. And hey, like we always like to live with everyone with the show, stay curious, ask the right questions and the hard questions. Until next one, everyone. Bye bye.
Sweet. Peace.
Peace.